All right, going back to Genesis. We're going to be in Genesis 42, but just a quick recap. We left Joseph last time as he has been elevated to the second person in charge over all of the land of Egypt. Matter of fact, it says he is equal to Pharaoh. It's only by position that Pharaoh outranks him, but his word is as the word of Pharaoh, as we see when Pharaoh gives him his signet ring. That means Joseph has all the power in Pharaoh, and that's another way that Joseph prefigures Christ. Because if you read the Gospels, what does Jesus himself say? That all authority has been given to the Son by the Father. He's equal in authority to the Father. It's only a difference in position, right? And the same with Joseph as we look at the life of Joseph. So, any questions on Joseph so far? All right, and there's an important verse back in chapter 41 in verse 55. When all of the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, what he says to you, do." It's very similar to what Jesus' mother says at the wedding in Cana, isn't it? When Mary looks at Jesus, says they're out of wine, and Jesus said, "Woman, what is that to me? My time is not yet come." And Mary doesn't even really respond to her son. She simply looks at the servants there and say, "What he tells you to do it. Whatever he tells you to do, do." So it's another way that this is pointing towards what Jesus would do. But moreover than that, what Pharaoh is saying to the people when they come to him for bread is that Jesus has the authority, or Joseph has the authority. You go see Joseph. Whatever Joseph tells you to do, you do. It's the same thing when we come to salvation. We must come to Jesus. So, any questions about Joseph so far? All right, chapter 42. When Jacob, now remember, Jacob has been renamed Israel. So when you see the name Jacob in here, it's synonymous with Israel. And when Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, excuse me, did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land, and he was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Does anybody remember why his brothers were so angry with Joseph? His dreams, remember Joseph's dreams? That they would all bow down to him, right? That all his brothers would bow down to him. So here is the first fulfillment of that. Verse 7, Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Where did you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Another way that Joseph prefigures Christ, right? Turn to John chapter 1, Gospel of John chapter 1. The true light, verse 9, the true light which gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. Jesus comes, and his own brothers do not recognize him. The Jewish people do not recognize Jesus when they come to him, or when he comes to them. Here in this case, Joseph's brothers do not recognize Joseph. Remember what his brothers did to Joseph. Everybody, I might be saying some things that you're not understanding if you don't recall that Joseph's brothers threw him in a dry well, and sold him into slavery, right? So His brothers did not recognize him. And Joseph, verse 9, chapter 42, Genesis, and Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, no, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see. And they said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. Speaking of Joseph. But Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Now, stop right there. Anybody remember who the youngest brother is? His name is Benjamin, right? What does Benjamin mean? Jacob named him after Rachel died, giving birth. So what does Benjamin?
I remember she named him son of my sorrow, Ben-Oni or something.
Son of my sorrow, right? That's what it means, the son of sorrow. Just like Jesus is the man of sorrow. Benjamin is the son of sorrow. Just keep that in mind. Unless the man of sorrow, the son of sorrow comes here, you shall not go up from this place. So he's telling them, you're not, you've got to bring Benjamin. You've got to bring me your youngest brother. Verse 16, send one of you and let him bring your brother, while you may remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said, in verse 21, then they said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? They're discussing Joseph. But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. So they have recognized that the trouble that they're getting ready to experience is because they sinned against their brother Joseph, right? The trouble they experienced is because they rejected Joseph as their brother. They rejected Joseph as the one who was going to be the leader of the brothers. They rejected Joseph's dreams. They rejected Joseph, and in essence, they killed him, right? Obviously, they didn't really kill him, but he might as well have been dead to Jacob and the rest of them. And so they're recognizing it's their own refusal to recognize Joseph and turn against Joseph that is bringing all this trouble on them right now that's going to follow. It's the same way. The children of Israel, the nation of Israel, will finally recognize that the trouble that they have experienced throughout all of their history is because they rejected the one the Father sent. Remember, they rejected Joseph, who the Father sent, because the nation of Israel rejected the one who God sent. Then all of this trouble has come upon them. That makes sense? Okay. Then he turned away from them and wept, in verse 24. And he returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of the sack. He said to his brothers, my money has been put back there in the mouth. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed them, And they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? Then they came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan. They told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. Now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Seems kind of harsh of Jacob, doesn't it? Right? He just flat out said to his other 9 sons that that's all that's standing before him. Look, I don't have but 2. Right? Joseph's dead, and Benjamin's the only one left. It's because Benjamin and Joseph were the sons of the woman he loved. Remember, he didn't like Rachel or Leah that much. He liked Rachel. He loved Rachel. And Rachel was barren, but God finally opened her wombs and gave him Joseph and Benjamin through Rachel. So they were his favorites, which caused a lot of these issues to start with. But few things in here that point us to Christ. In verse 27, and they gave them to give them provisions for the journey. So Joseph provides them provisions to go on their journey. What does Jesus provide us to go on our journey? He gives us the Holy Spirit, right? The Holy Spirit is a gift of Jesus as our provision for our journey here on earth. So that's another way that Joseph prefigures Christ. Another way that he prefigures Christ is that the people who come to him, his brothers who come to him, they're given the gift of life, the bread of life, for free, right? They bring money to pay for it, but Joseph puts it back in their sack. He's not going to take any money for it because they cannot buy from him because he is their brother. Same way, we don't bring anything for our salvation. We don't bring anything to Jesus. We cannot bring anything to Jesus, right? Many people try. Most people try, right? That's what religion is people attempting to make their way with God by their own efforts or their own work or whatever they bring to the table. But no, it's totally free. So just like they were given the means of life to continue life so that they wouldn't die of starvation, it was totally free. But it seems kind of harsh to me that Jacob said, no, just leave Simeon. Simeon's already gone. I'm keeping Benjamin here, and we'll just leave Simeon in there. We'll consider him dead too because he's slaved in Egypt now. So questions about chapter 42? All right, so chapter 43, we see that...
Jeff, I was trying to find the unmute button there, but so from the time that Joseph was traded into slavery until now, about how many, do they know about how many years it is?
Yes. I wish you hadn't asked that question because I knew before you asked.
Would he be like 33 now, same as Christ?
He began working for Pharaoh at 30.
30, okay.
Yeah, same as Jesus. So I'm thinking 34 years.
Okay.
He was about 34 years old when his father comes, I think.
Okay.
So right now he's 32, 33, because we see it's the next year that we're going to talk about in chapter 43.
Okay.
So it's been a year and they have not went back, right?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why they didn't recognize him. Have it been that many years or something?
Yeah, it had. You know, he was what, about 17 when he was sold into slavery? And so
Yeah.
now he's groomed like an Egyptian. He's dressing like an Egyptian, right? So he looked totally different than he would have as a Hebrew.
Yeah.
He's in Egyptian garbs and all of that stuff. But I'm looking here. Something's telling me it's in the text somewhere. But anyhow, in chapter 43, they finally, now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little food." And then Judah prompts it. And Judah is going to take a prominent role here as the protector and as a stand-in, as a substitute, as an intercessor and a substitute. So the narrative switches a little bit to where Judah, obviously the tribe that Jesus comes from, right? He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Messiah comes from the line of Judah. But Judah begins to act in a manner as the Messiah. But Judah said to him, the man solemnly warned us, saying, "You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send your brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you should not see my face unless your brother is with you." And then they have a little conversation. And in verse 8, and Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge for his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice." So Jacob finally gives in. But the point I want you to understand is Judah stands up and says, "I will be his surety. I will ensure that your son returns to you." Right? Just the way that Jesus has ensured that God's people will come to him. Judah is standing up and saying, "Okay, I'm going to take responsibility." Remember, Reuben is still the oldest. Simeon's in captivity, but he's older than Judah. So we've got Judah stepping up to act in the role as the Savior, right? "Yes, we're going to go get your food, Father, but I'll take him and you can require him from my hand. I will be responsible for him. And if I don't bring him back, then you can kill me." So that makes sense to everybody? And so Jacob, or Israel, finally gives in and says, "Okay, you take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man with some balm, honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds and such. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you your money that was returned in the mouth of the sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise and go to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, I am bereaved of my children. I am bereaved." So they take this present and they go down back to Egypt. So they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told them and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. They said, "It is because of the money which was placed in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us and make us servants and seize our donkeys." So they go up to the steward of Joseph's house and they tell him, "Lord, the first time we came down, right, we brought money to pay for it, but when we got back, we figured out that the money was still in the sacks. We didn't mean to steal the stuff. We meant to pay for the stuff. So here is what we took." And the steward goes, "It's all right. We got your payment. We know that you paid. You're not in trouble for that." And then he brings Simeon out to them. And then they bring him in. And when Joseph comes home in verse 26, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and bowed down to him on the ground. So they're bowing to their brother again. And then they have a little conversation. And in verse 28, they said, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest son, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brothers, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, serve the food. And so we're given a little soliloquy about how they all eat separately, because Egyptians wouldn't eat with Jews and Jews wouldn't eat with Egyptians. But Joseph sends them portions. Verse 34, portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him. So chapter 43 is their second encounter with Joseph, right? And there's going to be something similar play out as we go down in chapter 44. So any questions about chapter 43? Chapter 43 is just really setting the scene. Is really just setting the scene for what's getting ready to happen in chapter 44, where he's going to test his brothers. Then he commanded the steward of the house, chapter 44, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did just as Joseph told him. Now, chapter 44 can confuse a lot of people. Why is Joseph doing this again? Right? He's got all the brothers there together. Why doesn't he just reveal himself to his brothers right then? Because he's going to put them to the test. Remember earlier in the first encounter, he overhears them in Hebrew talking about how they sinned against Joseph, and it's because of their sin against Joseph and the way they treated Joseph that they're not going to, that they're facing these difficulties. Well, Joseph wants to see if they have truly changed or not, if they have truly repented of what they did to Joseph, to see what they will do on account of Benjamin. Will they intercede on Benjamin's behalf, or will they sacrifice Benjamin as well as they sacrificed Joseph? Right? Benjamin's in no danger, but Joseph is putting his brothers to the test to see if they were sincere when they were speaking about the sin that they committed against Joseph. Does that make any sense? If you've never read chapter 44, that probably didn't make a lick of sense, but it will as we go through it. But and he did as Joseph told him. Verse 3, as soon as the morning was light and the men were sent away with their donkeys, they had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? Don't let that throw you. The word underlined, practice divination, is seek wisdom, right? So contemplate to learn is what the underlying Hebrew means. So because the Bible is against divination, that's a different word in the Hebrew. This simply means to seek to gain knowledge. And you have done evil in doing this. When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, our money that we found in the mouths of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we also will be my Lord's servants. He said, let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground. Each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. So they passed the first test. They don't give Benjamin up. They turn right back around to go beg Joseph. who has made this decree. Verse 14, when Judah and his brothers came to, notice how Judah is now taking the lead. It's not Benjamin, it's Judah. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Another time they're bowing to him. Joseph said to them, what deeds is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? Again, don't let that English term fool you. In the Hebrew, it means can seek to define knowledge or understand things. And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found. Now, notice what Judah says. Judah rightly understands where their guilt ultimately has come from. It's not Joseph, right? They don't know he's Joseph, but the man in Egypt, it's not him, it's God. Notice what he says. He says, what shall we speak, or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. What guilt is he talking about? The same guilt that Joseph is testing them over, what they have done to Joseph. And Judah is recognizing that all of this is happening because we have sinned against Joseph. We sinned against God and against Joseph. God has found out our guilt. So there's nothing we can do. Therefore, we will all be your servants. We're willing to pay the price of our sinfulness. Verse 17, but he, being Joseph, said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose cup was found shall be my servant. As for you, go in peace up to your father. Then Judah went up to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears. Now he's going to step into the role as advocate. Let your servant speak a word into my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. And so he begins interceding for Benjamin. And verse 30, now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all of my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Judah has stepped up, and Judah may have been one of the ringleaders that sold Joseph into slavery, but now Judah is the one who is stepping up, and we see that his sorrow over that act, that sin, is sincere, because he is willing to take Benjamin's place. Instead of sending, going back to his father and say, you've lost another son, he's going to send Benjamin back to his father and become the servant, become a slave of Joseph. That's what the offer is. Let me take his place. Just as Jesus takes our place, just as Jesus took everybody's place who comes to him in faith, Judah was willing to take Benjamin's place. He steps up into the role as interceder and substitute. So, questions about chapter 44? All right, we're going to get through chapter 45 because for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to be online doing this because it'll be midnight over there, midnight 30. So, in chapter 45, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me here before you to preserve life. So Joseph has already recognized that what his brothers meant for evil, God meant for good, right? And what the nation of Israel, when they condemned Jesus to the cross, meant for evil. What Satan meant for evil, God meant for good, because it was by that condemnation, by the brothers' condemnation of Joseph, that Joseph would preserve their lives. And it's by the condemnation of Jesus that all our lives have the opportunity to be preserved. Verse 6, for the famine has been in these land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Then he tells him, go hurry up to his father, and then tell his father all about him. And then come live in Egypt. Come live in Egypt, and I will take care of you. I will provide everything you need. And in verse 13, you must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck, and he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After this, his brothers talked with him. And then Pharaoh hears about Joseph's brothers have come, and it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beast and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, were commanded to say, do this, take the wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father, and come, and have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph, wow, slow down, Jeff. Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. And to each and all of them he gave a change of clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. Then verse 24 of chapter 45 of Genesis always cracks me up, but I'm sure it's serious. And we'll talk about the seriousness of it. But verse 25 says this, or 24 says this: then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. It always cracks me up. Don't quarrel, right? Now, why would he say that? I think there's a couple of reasons. One reason is he knows his brothers, and he knows that they're going to start pointing fingers as soon as they get out of the, Reuben's going to once again start pointing fingers, said, I told you we shouldn't have done that to him. And then the rest of them are going to come back and say, didn't you hear what he said? He said, God did it, right? He's not angry with us. God did it. It's turning out to be a good thing. And then they're arguing about who's going to have to tell Jacob that they lied to him all those years ago. So Joseph says, don't quarrel on the way. Just go do what I told you to do, but don't quarrel. But that is exactly what we are told all through the New Testament, isn't it? Especially the New Testament epistles, right? We're in Philippians and Sunday mornings. The end of Philippians, what's Paul do? Tell them women to stop quarreling. Stop quarreling, right? Get along. We're to get along. We're not to quarrel. The quarreling within the church destroys more testimonies than anything else, I believe. The inability of God's people to set aside their differences and deal with each other in a loving and humble manner has destroyed more Christian testimonies, destroyed more churches than anything else, right? I mean, most churches argue about the carpet color. Who cares, right? Nobody really should care, but for some reason it's important to some people. They argue about the music style. They argue about all kinds of things. Some want stained glass windows. Some don't want stained glass windows. Some want pews. Some want chairs. Why do we bother quarreling over stuff like that? So I think it's in there as a warning for us as well. But it brings a chuckle to me every time I read chapter 45. Do not quarrel on the way. And so they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart became numb, for he did not believe them. when they had told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go see him before I die." So that brings us to the end of chapter 45. Chapter 46, which we'll get in when I get back, we'll start talking about the children of Israel in the land of Egypt. So questions, comments, concerns? Take it by your silence. Nobody wants to talk. I'm going to give Terry a few minutes to unmute because he has trouble doing that.
Well, I was just going to say, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. But I agree with you that the part, don't be quarreling.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, everybody's starting to point fingers. I told you, man.
Yeah. And it's funny to me that that's the very last thing he said before he sends them on the way. Don't quarrel on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Sounds like the story of my life.
That's not going to stop either. You got 3 little boys? That is not going to stop. I'm 59. My brother is, well, how old will I be this? I'll be 60 this year. My brother will turn 61 in July. We still quarrel sometimes.
Yeah.
Not nearly as bad as we used to. Not nearly as bad as we used to, but we still do. Don't we, Mama? If he'd just listen to me.
She's trying to find that unmute button.